Hello and welcome to Spanish Basics. In this module, I'll be speaking to you about participle usage in Spanish. So these are the topics I'll be covering. I'll begin with an introduction to present participles. I'll follow that with an introduction to progressive continuous tenses. And then I'll follow that with an introduction to past participles. Now please note it would really be helpful if you would please review modules 8, 9, 10, and 13 before starting this module. Let's talk about an introduction to present participles. In English, a present participle is a verb form which ends in ing. For example, dancing, walking, and flying. The Spanish conjugation rules for present participles are, for AR verbs, replace the AR ending with ANDO. An example is caminando, which is walking. For ER and IR verbs, replace the ER and IR with IENDO. For example, bebiendo, which is drinking. Now, present participles are verb forms used to express continuous actions. If emphasis on a continuous action is not needed, then just use the simple tenses, for example, the present tense. Now, this is a bit more on an introduction to present participles. If the stem of the ER or IR verb ends in a vowel, the ending IENDO changes to YENDO. Here are some examples. Leer, the present participle is leyendo, which is reading. For creer, it's creyendo, believing. For traer, it's trayendo, which is bringing. For caer, it's cayendo, which is falling. For huir, it's oyendo, which is hearing. For huir, it's huyendo, which is fleeing. For construir, it's construyendo, which is building. Now, with stem changing IR verbs, the stem changes in the present participle as well. So we change the stem vowel from E to I, for example, with servir, which the present participle is sirviendo, which is serving. Now, we can also change the stem vowel O to U, for example, dormir, and that becomes durmiendo, which is sleeping. These irregular verbs have irregular present participles. Decir, diciendo, which is saying, venir, viniendo, which is coming, poder, pudiendo, which is being able, ir is yendo, which is going. Now, this is a slide where I'll give you an overview of the progressive tenses. And then following that will be slides where I'll go into more detail on each progressive tense. Now, present participles in Spanish are used to form progressive or continuous tenses with a form of the verb estar. Now, the Spanish present progressive, an example is, I am speaking to my mother. Estoy hablando con mi madre. For the Spanish preterite progressive, an example is, we were studying all weekend. Estuvimos estudiando todo el fin de semana. An example of the Spanish imperfect progressive is, I was talking to my mother when you called. Estaba hablando con mi madre cuando llamaste. An example of the Spanish future progressive tense is, you'll be leaving the day I arrive. Estarás saliendo el día que llegue. And lastly, an example of the Spanish conditional progressive tense is, I would be asking for help if I could not walk. Estaría pidiendo ayuda si no pudiera caminar. Now let's get more detail on the Spanish present progressive tense. The present progressive is used to talk about something that is happening now. The conjugation rule is we use the present tense of the verb estar plus the present participle form of the verb. Examples are, I'm swimming. Estoy nadando. Grandma is sleeping in the living room. La abuela está durmiendo en la sala. We are cooking lunch. Estamos cocinando el almuerzo. Here I'll speak to the Spanish preterite progressive. The preterite progressive tense is used to talk about something that was going on at some point in the past. The conjugation rule is use the preterite tense of the verb estar plus the present participle form of the verb. Examples. We were studying all weekend. Estuvimos estudiando todo el fin de semana. For how long were you swimming? ¿Por cuánto tiempo estuviste nadando? Now here I'll speak to the Spanish imperfect progressive. The imperfect progressive tense tells what a person was doing. It's an action. Use it to emphasize the fact that an action in the past was interrupted. The conjugation rule is use the imperfect tense of the verb estar plus the present participle form of the verb. Examples are, I was talking to my mother when you called. Estaba hablando con mi madre cuando llamaste. He was working at 8 o'clock. Estaba trabajando a las 8. Now this slide, I'll speak to the Spanish future progressive. The future progressive tense is used to talk about something that will be happening at some point in the future. The conjugation rule is, use the future tense of the verb estar plus the present participle form of the verb. Examples are, Thursday at 4, you'll be finishing your English test. El jueves a las 4 estarás terminado su examen de inglés. In a week, we'll be driving. En una semana estaremos manejando. Now here is the Spanish conditional progressive. The conditional progressive tense is used to talk about something that would be happening if some other event were to occur. The conjugation rule is, use the conditional tense of the verb estar plus the present participle form of the verb. Examples, if it were up to me, we would be having dinner right now. Si por mí fuera, ahora mismo estaríamos cenado. If you had gone to the dance, you would be dancing right now. Si hubieras ido al baile, estarías bailando ahora mismo. Now I'm going to switch, and we're going to be talking now on past participles, and this is an introduction. In English, a past participle is a verb form which ends in ed. Examples are worked, talked, and walked. Now, the Spanish conjugation rules for past participles are, for AR verbs, replace the AR ending with ADO. An example is caminando, which is walked. For ER and IR verbs, replace the ER and IR with IDO. An example is pedido, which is asked. Now, here I'll give you some examples of where we use the past participle. One is to form compound tenses with haber, to have. The traveler has left his home. El viajero ha dejado su casa. Another example is to form passive expressions with ser, to be. Running is prohibited here. Es prohibido correr aquí. Another example is to express a completed action or state with estar, to be. The game is finished. El juego ha terminado. Another example is to express the circumstances of a state or action. School being over, the students left. Terminada la escuela, los estudiantes se fueron. And then lastly, as an adjective, the tired crowd, la multitud cansada. With this, we're about to end this module, but as is my custom, I like to give you a refrain or a proverb. Errar es humano, perdonar divino. To err is human, to forgive divine. I want to thank you for watching Spanish Basics. Please tune in for other modules that may interest you. Bye now. Adios.